I just came up with the title for the teaching last night, late, like right before I sent it out. Why save that guy? I love this title. I love it. I was thinking, I came up with this and I came up with that, and I thought all different kinds of things. But really, the bottom line is there is no reason for God to have saved Lot. No reason whatsoever. Except one, the covenant that God had with Abraham, and that's it. So I kept thinking, like, I put myself in Lot's position, and I was like, God keeps reaching down and saving this guy. And so really, if I put myself in that position, my question would be, why save that guy? And so really, that is the message of the story of Lot. Everybody wants to talk about Sodom and Gomorrah, in a political sense, but that isn't why it's in the Bible. It's in the Bible to show God's incredible grace. And it's not grace to the Sodomites or the Amorites. It's not that. It's grace to this one guy who's a total failure, total jerk, greedy. He's a horrible, horrible person, but he's righteous. Just like all of us. Horrible person, but he's righteous. So we're going to read one small part of the Torah portion, one small part of the story of Lot from one small part of the Torah portion. And then I'm going to reference other verses in the Torah portion, but we're going to read this part of the story so you can know what's going on. It's from Bereshit 18:1 is the Torah portion. We're going to start in verse 16 through 33. I think it's the third aliyah, I believe. There are 7 aliyot every week, 7 people that are called to read from the Torah. I believe this is the third. Then the men, the 3 angels, rose up from there, and they looked down towards Sodom. And the Lord says, "Shall I hide from Abraham what I'm about to do?" That is really important. So whose idea is it to do what God is about to do? It's God's idea. But most of the commentaries focus on what Abraham said and what Abraham did, and how God, like he bargained with God. God had already decided and told Abraham what he was going to do. That's not what the bargaining that Abraham did was about. It wasn't to save Sodom and Gomorrah. That wasn't it. God already said he was going to do it, and that's it. It's a done deal. Shall I hide from Abraham what I'm about to do? Because Abraham will become a great and mighty nation, I've chosen him so that he can establish, establish his children, to keep the way of the Lord. The Lord said, "The outcry of Sodom and Gomorrah is great, and their sin is extremely grave. I will descend now and see if they have done fully as the outcry which has come to me, and if not, I'll know." Abraham approached and said, "Will you indeed sweep away the righteous with the wicked?" So in this bargaining that Abraham goes through, he's going to start at 50, go to 40, go to 30, go to 20, and then down to 10. And most people think he's talking about the people in Sodom and Gomorrah. He is not. That's not what he's talking about. And I'm going to show you this. He says, "Will you indeed sweep away the righteous with the wicked?" So God already said he's going to destroy the city. What righteous? What righteous would there be? So it's got to be somebody else. Suppose there are 50 righteous people in the city. Will you really sweep away and not spare the place for the sake of 50 righteous? Far be it from you to do such a thing, to kill the righteous with the wicked. So the righteous and the wicked are the same. Far be it from you. Shall not the judge of all the earth do justly? So the Lord said, "Okay, if I find in Sodom 50 righteous in the city, I'll spare the whole place on their account." And Abraham said, I've taken it on myself to speak to Yehovah, even though I am dust and ashes. If the 50 righteous are lacking 5, Now watch how he says it. He doesn't say, will you save will you save it for the 45? He says, are you going to kill everybody because of 5 people? That's how he says it. If the 50 righteous are lacking 5, will you destroy the whole city because of 5? Will you destroy the whole city because of 5 people? This is very manipulative, but this is good prayer. I like this. It's very manipulative. It's very like he'll try any trick to do what he's trying to do, which is not to save Sodom or Gomorrah. So you're going to kill him just for 5? And he spoke to him again and said, I will not destroy if I find 45. And he spoke to him again and said, suppose 40 are found there. And he said, I won't do it on account of the 40. Then he said, suppose 30 are found there. And he said, I will not do it if I find 30. And he said, suppose 20 are found there. And he said, I will not destroy on account of the 20. And he said, I'll speak only this once. He's already spoken 10 times. And now he says, I'm going to speak only one time. So this is the important one. All the other stuff was fluff. All the other stuff was a picture. But this one is the one time he speaks. And that's what he says in Hebrew. I'm going to speak one time to you. And this is what I'm going to say. I'll speak only this one time. Suppose 10 are found there. That's what Abraham said. And that's all that matters. And he said, I will not destroy on account of the 10. As soon as he'd finished speaking to Abraham, the Lord departed, and Abraham returned to his place. So I looked at a lot of commentaries, Jewish commentaries, Christian commentaries. They all basically said the same thing in the Christian world, which was Abraham was bargaining with God, and he was terrified. He was scared. The Jewish commentaries are very different. They all say the same thing, but they're very, very different. They say Abraham was righteous. Abraham was speaking God's words back to God. Abraham was bargaining for the whole world, sort of, for Sodom and Gomorrah, sort of, but really for his nephew. That's really who he was focusing on. And they are absolutely right. He had already had this enormous battle where he went and took Lot, what he owned, the tents, the flocks, the herds, the women, the children, everything he owned. He went and he destroyed the Babylonian giant army, the monsters from Babylon, took it all back and brought it back down south. He saved Lot. He put his neck on the line to save Lot because that's what God wanted. And now he has to do it again. And he wouldn't have had to do it if Lot was in the right place at the right time doing the right thing. But he wasn't. He was a jerk. So when asking for 45, he starts with, now that I've been so bold as to speak to the Lord, though I am nothing but dust and ashes. When asking for 30, he says, may the Lord not be angry, but let me speak. And again asking for 20, now that I've been so bold as to speak to the Lord. And again asking for 10, may the Lord not be angry, but let me speak just once. Just once more. Now these 1, 2, 3, 4 headings, what kind of website do you think this is from? A Christian website or a Jewish website? Jewish. Wrong. Christian. Because they focus on the fear. And then they translate that last one as, but let me speak just once more. It doesn't say just once more. He says, I will speak one time. And this is the important one. But when Christians read this, for the most part, not all, but for the most part, they get this sense of, Abraham's terrified of God, and he's just like very respectful. That's not what's going on. That's not what's going on at all. He'd just shown that he's not, terrified. He went up against this mighty army from Babylon. So, this is what Rashi says. Perhaps there are 50 righteous men, 10 righteous men for each city. Oh, because there were 5 places. What were the 5 places? Remember we saw the 5 cities down in the circle, the Kikar, the circle of the valley last week, that went up against Babylon and they got whipped And so Abraham had to go defeat Babylon. Sodom, Amorah, Admah, Savoim, and Soar, which is called Bela. Bela means destruction. All right? So what Rashi is saying is, look, these are still the same 5 cities we're talking about in the last story. And they were horrible, horrible people, remember? Look at their names. Bera, in evil. Be'irsha, in wickedness. Shinav, hatred of the father, or Senav, hatred of the father. Shemever, made wings, so he could fly to make war against God, is what Rashi said. But those are the names. They're horrible people. And look at the names of the places they named. Sodom, burning. Amorah, to enslave people. Admah, ground, dirt, land, clay, the earth, the world. Savoim, a hyena or a rapacious animal. You know, with those giant jaws that eat even lions. And Bela, to devour, destruction. These are the 5 cities that they were dealing with. And these are the 5 kings that they were dealing with. And so Rashi says, well, wait a minute. Maybe what Abraham meant was maybe there's 10 in each city. But I'm going to show you that not even that is possible. So, what we're going to focus on is, then he said, I'll speak only this once. Suppose 10 are found there. And he said, I will not destroy on account of the 10. So the question is, why 10 righteous? And, you know, Jews always say the same thing. They say a minyan, to have a congregation, to have a service, you have to have 10 men. It's called a minyan. It's a quorum in Latin, but it's a minyan in Hebrew. And so they always say, well, to have a congregation, you have to have 10. Okay, that's true. That is a picture God set up, but that's not what this is about. There's something more here. So here's what Rashi says. Peradventure, maybe there shall be 10 found there. For a smaller number he did not plead, because he knew already of 2 instances where less than 10 had failed to save the wicked. What were one of them? What was one of them? The big one. The flood. How many righteous were there during the flood? Okay, good. So there's flood. In the generation of the flood, there were 8 righteous people. Noach, his sons, and their wives. And by the way, this is only written in the New Testament. Like the number 8, there being 8 righteous, it's in 1 Peter 3. Who once would not listen when the patience of God kept waiting in the days of Noach, during the construction of the ark, in which a few, that is 8 persons, were brought safely through the water. That's not in the Torah. That's only in the New Testament. Gives you the number. So, in the flood there were 8 righteous people. That is, Noach, his sons, and their wives, and they could not save their generation. Now, this is from Genesis Rabbah 49:13. I read all of Genesis Rabbah 49 and all of Genesis Rabbah 50. It's a lot. But then he says this, and I could not figure out what he meant. And for 9, in association with God, he had already pleaded, but had found no acceptance. So we know he pleaded for 8. I mean, the 8 were pleaded for by Noach, and they were saved. But the whole world couldn't be saved. No matter how much prayer Noah did, it could not be saved, because there were only 8. But then he says, well, it didn't work for 9 either. Now, I had a hard time figuring out what he's talking about. So I finally figured it out from Gur Aryeh. This is a really great writer, a great rabbi, Gur Aryeh. He says, he prayed also for 9, including God, as it says in verse 28, but suppose they lack 5 of the 50 righteous. So, 5 cities. He says, remember, suppose they lack 5. So you take away 5 from the 50 from each city, and you have 5 from the 10, and you have Including God, you have 9. You have 9. So 9 times 5 is 45, yes? So that's for each city. You got 50, you take away 5, there's 45 for each city. And that's what Rashi was saying. It's very hard to understand. But Gur Aryeh explains it. So that's what he's referring to. So what he's saying is, take away the 5, and I ain't going to save them. I'm not going to save it for 8. I'm not even going to save it for 9. So it's got to be 10. You with me so far? Okay, it's got to be 10. Now this is from a Devar Torah by Carla Friedman, and it's titled The Education of Abraham. God says this, and I'm going to destroy the cities, knowing that there are not 50 good people, not 45, not 40. In fact, there's not even 10 good there in Sodom. And then she immediately goes to Lot. And she's right to do it. Lot, his wife, his daughters, his sons-in-law, total 8. She is wrong. It's not 8. The rabbis don't agree with this either. They don't say it's 8. I'm going to show you what I mean, that it's not 8. Now, she's got the right concept that Lot is down there in the worst city on the planet, Sodom, because it's a very, very rich city. It's like New York City or L.A. It's basically L.A. And he's down in L.A. and he's making tons of money, and he's got all these connections. It's just, you just have to put up with a little sodomy once in a while, that's all. But, it's L.A., who cares? And so she, like Abraham, puts their mind right on the righteous people that might be righteous, might be righteous in Sodom. Maybe. How many are there? She says there's 8. I say there's 10, which is why he had to say 10. According to the rabbis, this is from Wikipedia, so don't put too much stock in it. According to the rabbis, Lot had 4 daughters, 2 of whom were married and 2 were betrothed. I believe this is wrong. This is not true. The 2 married daughters and their husbands, along with the future bridegrooms, remained in Sodom, and they perished, leaving Lot with only 2 daughters after the destruction of the city. Now, Wikipedia gets this from the people that write in and, write to Wikipedia and add stuff. And they quote Genesis Rabbah 50 verse 9. Genesis Rabbah 50 verse 9 doesn't necessarily say this. I've got it down here in the bottom. We'll get to it shortly. Now, Genesis 19 tells us who is in the city. It tells us who's righteous may be in the city. 12 through 15. Then the 2 men, the 2 angels, said to Lot, "Whom else do you have here? A son-in-law," 1. And so if there's a son-in-law, what is there? A daughter. And your sons, plural, so that's at least 2 more. And daughters, plural, 2 more. And whomever you have in the city, and bring them out of the place. So Lot, we didn't count him, and his wife, we didn't count her, Lot and his wife went out and spoke to his sons-in-law, plural, sons-in-law, who were going to marry his daughters, plural. So how many does that give us? 10. There's 10 righteous, which is why Abraham was asking this one time. I'm going to say one thing, just one. What if there's 10 righteous? Will you save Sodom for that? Does he end up saving Sodom? Does God save Sodom? No. No, he turns it to toast because there weren't 10 righteous there. I'm going to say there was 1. But whether that be or not be, the key is that Abraham was pleading for that one family of 10. Look, Lot was righteous because of Abraham. Maybe his family was righteous because of Lot. Maybe. And so he's pleading for them. And that's it. That's all he was doing. He'd already saved him once, so now he's trying to save him again. So we have Lot, Lot's wife, son-in-law, daughter to that son-in-law, sons. Now, the rabbis say it was his grandsons. Some of the rabbis say it was his grandsons. And that's done a lot in the Bible. So whether it's the sons of his married daughters or his sons, it doesn't matter. There's still plural, so that gives us 2. And then, where am I? Daughters, plural, and sons-in-law, plural. So that gives us 10. Now here's what it says in Bereshit Rabbah 50. Betrothed, it talks about his betrothed daughters. Now in Judaism, if you're betrothed, can you have sex with your wife? No. If you're betrothed, can you live in the house of her parents? Yes. If you're betrothed, can you live in the house of your parents? Yes. If you're betrothed, can you have children together? No. Can you raise children? No. Because you can't act like you're married until the actual marriage happens, which is the second part. So they're betrothed. That means they're looked at as married, but they can't have sex yet. Betrothed in this sense means married, but before the home-taking ceremony, taking her to the chuppah and then having sex, without which the marriage might not be consummated. The Midrash understands sons-in-law to mean those who were already married, and those who were taking his daughters as different ones. Hence, look what it says. It is assumed. Not this is what we're saying as doctrine. It is assumed that there were 2 of each, 2 married, 2 not married. There was not 2 married and 2 not married. There was 1 married and 2 not married. And the 2 that were not married, that were betrothed, they died. And I went the other way. The 2 that were betrothed went with Lot, and the one that was married with children, she stayed in Sodom and was destroyed. So there's not 4, there's 3 daughters. 2 of them were saved. Okay, is that clear? All right, that's why he was asking for 10. Has nothing to do with a minyan. It has nothing to do with having, people together to pray. It has nothing to do with you have to have 10 righteous. He was pleading for that family. All right, so let's talk about Lot. And I say this, I'm not trying to put down anybody. I don't mean this. We're all in the same boat. Everybody's in the same boat. He is, I call him like the quintessential Christian, American Christian. Maybe not from someplace else, but American. Because the quintessential, normal, standard American Christian loves, and I'm in the same boat, loves money. We all love money. We all love security. We all love this life here, that we all have it so good. And when we don't have money, we pitch a fit, we throw a fit, we scream and yell, we get mad, we get depressed, we spiral into a depression. That's how it is in America. All because of religion. It's all because of religion. Because if we didn't have all this nonsense religion and just had a relationship with God, we wouldn't have to worry about this stuff. But because of the trappings, the surroundings of, quote, Hellenized Christianity, because of that, it's not a focus on Judaism, and so it's not a focus on our soul. We don't focus on our soul. And so if we don't have money, we get depressed. Well, Lot was just like this. And I'm not saying I'm not like this. We're all like this. Lot was like this too. So you're going to see on the slides pluses and minuses. And I want you to understand this. I really want you to understand this. Because I still hear some of you complaining about Christians. I understand it. Believe me, I understand it. But I still hear some of you complaining and wrestling with this issue of, well, how can they be born again if they don't do Judaism? Or how can they be looked at as righteous if they don't this or they don't that? Or they, you know what I'm saying? Look, he was in the same boat. He was in the same boat. He'd learned everything from Abraham. I know this because Lot's wife was turned into a pillar, and that's what it says in Hebrew, made out of salt, because she attacked him for learning from Abraham. He learned from Abraham. And so God called him 3 times righteous. But he was a money-grubbing, arrogant, selfish, prideful jerk. But God called him righteous. Genesis 14 says, they, Babylon, also took Lot, Abraham's nephew, and his possessions and departed because Lot was living in Sodom. He was already living in Sodom. That's why he got so many possessions. Yes. Yes. Yes.
Can you just repeat what you said?
Which part?
The last 10 words?
Uh,
Repeat my question when we speak, so I can understand what you said.
Okay. I just read this. That Abraham's nephew and his possessions, Abraham went and saved Lot and his possessions and departed because he was living in Sodom. Okay.
How come people's being called righteous?
I'll get to that. So, yeah, we're going to have to wrestle with this because this is weird. It's very, very strange. Why? We know why Jacob, who was a money-grubbing, thief, rip-off, he was a jerk. But we know why he was called righteous, because the bloodline of Abraham, Isaac, Jacob. God made a covenant with Abraham. God made a covenant with Isaac. God made a covenant with Jacob. That's why he was called righteous. But what about this dude, Lot? He's just Abraham's cousin or nephew. He ain't nothing. God didn't make a covenant with him. God made a covenant with Abraham. But because he learned from Abraham, after Abraham saved him, and before Abraham saved him, before Abraham went and saved Lot, he had already taught him Judaism. And yet, he still went to Sodom. So it tells us what a jerk he was. But Abraham had already taught him Judaism. Isn't that what makes us righteous? See, this is why you have to wrestle with it. Isn't that what makes us righteous? Doing the Torah and having it talk to us so we get to know God? Isn't that what makes us righteous? Hold on. We're going to have to really wrestle with this. The blood of Yeshua is not what makes us righteous. It makes our spirit only righteous. Our spirit, not our soul, not our nefesh. Our spirit we're born with a dead spirit, right? Hello? We're born with the dead spirit, right? Everybody's born with the dead spirit because of Adam. When that spirit comes to life, and we are not the judge of whose spirit comes to life. And we cannot judge somebody if they say they're born again, and we make a judgment and say, no, you're not born again, because the only way we can do that is if they really go against Judaism and the Torah and God and believers and the blood of Messiah and the Holy Spirit and all that. If they really make war on that, yes, you can say, no, you are not born again. But other than that, we can't say anything. We can't. If somebody's born again, if their spirit's alive, their spirit's alive. And it's very, very confusing. Who's born again and who isn't born again? I would submit to you that Lot was born again. We know Abraham was born again. He was born dead, wasn't he? From Adam, wasn't he born dead? Just like everybody? Yes or no? Okay. But he heard God's voice, and he did what God had said, and he circumcised himself, and he made a covenant, physically made a covenant with God. He was born again. He knew God. And because he was born again, Genesis 26:5 says that Abraham did Judaism. He didn't get born again because he did Judaism. He got born again after. I'm sorry. He didn't get born again because of Judaism. He got born again and then he did Judaism. Just like us. Same thing. You get born again and then you do Judaism in order to get to know God. Well, he did the same thing. And those things he taught to Lot. So I would submit to you that Lot was born again because the New Testament calls him righteous 3 times. And he learned from Abraham. Now, all through Bereshit Rabbah, 49 and 50, it says over and over and over and over and over, and Rashi says it, and the Talmud says it, and all the Jewish writings say the same thing over and over and over. You know what it is? Lot was righteous because of one thing, Abraham. That's it. He was only righteous because of Abraham. Because Abraham taught him Judaism. I don't know. That's what they say. They quote all kinds of verses, but I can't put them together for you and say this is the simplified doctrine. I can't do it. It's probably 50 times the rabbis say it in the Talmud, in the Midrash, I think it's in the Mishnah too, that they say over and over again that Lot was righteous only because of Abraham. I can't find it in the Torah, but it doesn't mean it's not true. It means they have understanding that I don't know yet. So, if you want to just go with the New Testament, go with that. He was righteous. Yes.
Capítulo más traducido. Entonces, él era justo porque era familiar de Abraham, because he was a family of Abraham, y hizo judaísmo y nació de nuevo, o
What?
entonces una persona que se llama.
Can you ask me a question?
No, I don't translate. He's asking.
Okay, then translate. Please.
So, él fue justo porque aprendió de Abraham y porque era de su linaje.
He said he asked him, so was he righteous because he was lineage of Abraham?
No. He was righteous because Abraham taught him Judaism in the same house.
Prácticamente todas las personas son como Lot, casi todos. Pues, todas las personas son como Lot. Y hacen judaísmo, pues ya, right? Pero cada quien explica.
Okay, you're having a conversation that I'm not involved in. Can you involve me, please?
He's asking you the question, but you already answered the question.
Okay.
So I'm trying to tell him why you already said.
Okay. No, he was not righteous because he was in the house, I'll say, of Abraham, related. Because the seed of the Messiah was not in him. The seed of Messiah went from Abraham to Isaac to Jacob, not to Lot, to Isaac. So the seed of Messiah was not in Lot. That's not what made him righteous. What made him righteous was what he learned in the house of his uncle, Abraham. That's it. Say it again.
We can all be righteous.
Yes, everybody can be righteous. Got to have the seed of Messiah, which Abraham taught him through Judaism. Now, how do we know he taught Lot? I don't know. That's what the rabbis say. I just don't know. I can't prove it. But that's what they say, and I believe it. Yes. Yes. Yes.
So, we know that Abraham's house was pagan,
Yes. Abraham's house was pagan.
but there must have been something in Lot that changed that made him separate himself from his pagan family and follow Abraham.
Maybe. It might have been a chase for money, too. It might have been wanting money that caused Lot to follow with Abraham. It might have been something righteous already in him. I don't know. And I can't find any commentary on it. I haven't read any. That's a good question, but I don't know the answer. But I do know this, I'm convinced of this, that Abraham, we know he did Judaism because it says it in Genesis 26. And we know that Lot learned from Abraham. We know he learned from him. I told you about the story about the salt, which we're going to get to. Other than that, we don't know a lot. But we know he's righteous. We know that. So all we can do is put together the clues we have to figure out how people are looked at as righteous. And they're still jerks. And this is the point, the real point of the story. We're going to have to wrestle with this. The more Judaism we learn, and the more Judaism we do, the less we want an attachment to Hellenism and to normative Christianity. It's normal. But if they're born again, and we're born again, we're both in the covenant, and we have to live together in the same house. We have to dwell in the same house. If they want to learn, fine. If they don't, nothing we can do about it. But the truth is, God calls this jerk righteous 3 times. If he rescued righteous Lot, who was oppressed by the perverted conduct of unscrupulous people, for by what he saw and heard, that righteous man, while living among them, felt his righteous soul tormented day after day by their lawless deeds. Now, obviously there was something in him, God was in him somehow, that made him just hated what was going on. Then why did he stay? Then why did he stay? He hated what he saw. Then why did he stay in Sodom? And not only, money is the answer. And not only that, but even when the angels tell him, God is about to zot this place and turn it into toast, he still wanted to stay. Why? If his soul is so tormented by the Sodomites. Money. It's got that much power. Our desire for money and love for money has that much power. Our desire. And it's in all of us.
Could it also have been family, because his daughters were married there? And
I'm sure family had something to do with it. I'm sure it had something to do with it. Rabbis bring that up and discuss it. What about the family? Maybe that's why he was the way he was. And all the rabbis say, nope, because, and they give other scriptures that show that it wasn't that. The bottom line is money. That's all there is to it.
That's the consensus of the rabbi.
Yes, that's the consensus of the rabbis.
So can we say that's the true meaning of believe and your whole household will be saved? Not because your whole household will be saved.
So what Ruby is saying is, so that is the meaning of believe and your whole house will be saved?
You will be speaking Judaism.
Yes, of course. Of course. The question is, what's being quoted there? If you believe in Yeshua, you and your whole house will be saved. What was being quoted? What's being quoted? Is it from the Tanakh? Is it from the Torah? It's about Abraham. Believe. Who was the father of emunah, of faith? Abraham. Believe. Have the faith of Abraham, and your whole house, your whole tent will be saved. And yes, that's exactly what it means. Doesn't mean turns them into good people. And this is where everybody kind of falls apart in their belief system. We don't become good people. We're supposed to be making ourselves better people. But just because we learn about God doesn't make us better people. It didn't for Lot, and it doesn't for me. I still have a lot of the same problems I've always had. But I'm trying. And that's the key. Just try. Just keep trying. Try hard. Has nothing to do with your salvation. It just means, are you a good person or a bad person? Now here's the cool thing. Lot's name talks about this thing that is in all believers. Look what his name means. A covering, a veil, secrets. Secrets. And it comes from lut, which means to cover over, to conceal, to hide, to wrap up, secrets. And this is the condition of most believers, that they live a secret life. We live a secret life. We have secrets that we don't share with the people that are part of our same congregation because it's too scary to expose our life to people. But the Jews don't live like that. Jews expose their life to each other. And then they judge each other, or they don't judge each other. But they expose their life to one another, for the most part. But this is the standard American Christian position. To conceal, to hide, to cover over. You know, we all do it. We're all in the same boat. But as a religion, this has infected the body of Messiah. This hiding. It makes everybody kind of just like Lot. How you doing this week? I'm doing all right. I'm doing all right. Good. Done. Conversation's over. All done. All done. Jews don't live like that. I mean, the first time I was in a Christian environment, it freaked me out that I would say, how you doing? And they'd say, wonderful. And then they walk away. And I go, bless the Lord. Right. Bless the Lord. Wait, don't leave. We just got started. But then it happened over and over and over and over and over and over. And it just kind of freaked me out. And then I started getting used to it. I was watching a fantastic movie about LBJ, Lyndon Baines Johnson. And he says he was raised dirt poor. And he used to teach in a one-room school on the border of Texas and Mexico. And he said, yeah. And he says, he's telling this to reporters, and he says, and I remember I was so in love with these kids. And then, one by one, the same thing would always happen. I'd see the light go out of their eyes. As soon as they figured out that the world hates them because of the color of their skin, the light would leave them. And that's what motivated him to do what he did to pass civil rights. Well, it's the same kind of thing, you know, this disconnection between believers. It happens over and over and over and over, and you get used to it. And then you start doing it. And then you stop connecting by being honest. And you end up like Lot. And it happens to everybody. But I would like you to be aware of it. It would be really cool if you could become aware of it. All right, so moving on, having to save Lot again for the second time. Genesis 19, yet he strongly urged them, so they, the angels, turned aside to him and entered his house. And he prepared a chag, a feast for them, and baked matzah. Why would he bake matzah for angels? Because it's Passover. It's Chag HaMatzah. I don't know which day of Chag HaMatzah it is, but it is. My belief is that it was the 14th, beginning of 15th, end of 14th, beginning of 15th, the first day of Chag HaMatzah. You know why? Because on the 14th, that evening, there's a saf, a pit, at the doorway of every house in which they drain the blood of the lambs. And that's where the angels are. And that's where the Sodomites are pushing against the angels to get past that into the house. That's my belief. So he makes some matzah, and they ate. And before they lay down, the men of Sodom surrounded the house, both young and old, and all the people from every quarter. All the people, come on, really? This is a huge town, probably 100,000 people. All the people from every quarter. Maybe. And they called to Lot and said, where are the men who came to you tonight? Bring them out so that we may know them, we may have relations with them. But Lot went out to them at the saf, at the doorway, and shut the door behind him and said, please, my brothers, don't act wickedly. But they said, get out of the way. They also said, this one came in as a foreigner. As a foreigner. They're looking at him like a Jew, because he's learned from Abraham. And he comes in as a but now you're going to act as a judge? Now we're going to treat you worse than them, than the angels. So they pressed hard. Now, what I don't understand is why they didn't take Lot. Why they just kind of press up against him. They're saying, we're going to kill you, we're going to sodomize you, whatever. But they don't. They just kind of press up against him. They pressed hard against Lot and moved forward to break the door. But the men reached out their hands. This is a miracle. The men reached out their hands to this mosh pit of people and somehow get a hold of Lot and whoosh, bring him into the house. That's a miracle. That's grace. And shut the door. Then they struck the men who were at the door with the house with blindness. Grace again. So what I'm showing you is that God kept showing Lot grace over and over and over. And this is the condition of the believer. That we keep sinning over and over, making the same mistakes, and God keeps showing us grace. Why? Because God's nice. And that's the bottom line. But if you ask most believers why, well, I try to obey the Lord, or whatever. There's always some kind of spiritual sort of response. But that's not the truth. The truth is God's nice, period. And God had a covenant with Abraham. And God has a covenant with believers through Yeshua. So we're all in the same boat. Brought Lot into the house with them, shut the door, struck the men who were at the door with blindness, from the small to the great, so that they became weary trying to find the doorway. Now, in chapter 19, then verse 16, this is what it says. And he tarried. And I was like, what? After all that saving you, you then stop and go, wait, maybe not, maybe I shouldn't go. After all that, and the guys are trying to sodomize you, after all that, no, maybe I shouldn't go. What about the kids? What about my daughters? Maybe, what about the money? I'm thinking, what is he thinking? So I went to Genesis Rabbi, and it tells us what he's thinking. But he tarried in order to save his possessions. This is why I'm saying what I'm saying. That's from Genesis Rabbah 50. Now Rashi says, but he lingered. Vayitmama. He kept on delaying, exclaiming, what a loss of gold and silver and precious stones. It's all about the stuff, man. It's all about the money. It'll kill your life. And I know I'm speaking from experience. It will kill your life. And we all do it. We all get scared. We all get nervous about money. We all spiral into a depression when there's no cash. We all do it. It will destroy your life. And I'm not going to give you a magic bullet either to fix it. So it's vayit mahma. And it comes from mama or maha. They're both the same word, mama or maha in Hebrew. And it means to deny or refuse, to refuse or turn back. What do most Christians call that? No, like when you turn back, to refuse. Backslide. Right, backsliding. Now, I used to think that backsliding was mitshuvah, from the word teshuvah. It's not. It's translated backsliding in Hosea when it says mitshuvah. So I thought, okay, that's right. It's not right. It's not right. It just means a turn. But this is more accurate. Mahma or maha means to refuse, or that's real backsliding. And that's what Lot did. And this is why I'm saying, you look at a typical American Christian, and you look at them and you go, oh, they're a backslidden Christian. No, they're not. They're born again, and they've turned because of money. And that's about it. It's very simple. Because they're scared. They want money. They want stuff. They want the world. They want the world. And they don't want to leave. And it's that simple, really. It's not deep. But people get real tangled up in this issue, and there's no need for it. It's very, very simple. In order to save his possessions. Now, 1 John I've heard this quoted a million times about this issue, and it's accurate. Do not love the world. Really? Really? Do not love the world? I mean, that's hard enough right there. Do not love the world or the things in the world. If anyone loves the world, the love of the Father is not in him. You see? The love of the Father is not in you. That's what that turns into, but that's not what's being said. What do you think's being quoted here? What's being quoted here? V'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha b'kol lavavcha uv'kol nafshecha uv'kol me'odecha. And you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, all your soul, and all your me'odecha, your extra, your ganas. Don't love the world. If anyone loves the world, that va'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha is you can't see it. It doesn't mean they're not believers. Doesn't mean they're not born again. Doesn't mean they're evil. It just means you can't see it. It's buried like Lot. It's covered over, and you got to uncover it. For everything in the world, the lust of the flesh, the lust of the eyes, the boastful pride of life, which is basically a perfect description of Lot, is not from the Father, it's from the world. And this is what Lot wanted. So when they had brought them, the angels had brought Lot and his family outside, one said, "Escape for your life." This is crazy. It's just crazy. An angel has just, let me back up. Abraham did a miracle and brought Lot back from destruction. God did that graciously, very, very graciously. And that was enough. So he goes and he lives in Sodom. Again. After all that, he goes and lives there again to get more stuff. And then the angels magically, miraculously, bring him into the house, strike the bad guys with blindness. These are miracles. And Lot still says, well, I don't know. Well, God, what a waste of money. It's crazy. When they had brought them outside, one said, "Escape for your life. Don't look behind you. Don't stay anywhere in the area. Escape to the mountains." Now he's going to start making excuses. Or you're going to be swept away. But Lot said to them, No, guys, come on. You've shown me grace. You've been really gracious to me. Sounds good. But then he makes an excuse. By saving my life. But I can't escape to the mountains because a disaster is going to overtake me there. How about if... And so he comes up with a scheme. And not only does he come up with a scheme, he goes from the fire pan into the fire. He comes up with an idea that makes it even worse than it was before. It's crazy. So he says, now behold, there's this little town that's not real far away. It's small. Guys, you've been so nice to me. I'm just asking for a little thing. It's small. Please let me escape there. Isn't it small? So that my life may be saved. They've already saved your life twice, you idiot. But now he's saying, I'll show you how to save my life. So God keeps saving his life, and so he keeps making excuses. This is how I want to be saved, right? This is how I'm going to want to be saved. He said to him, "Behold, I grant you this request too, okay? Not to overthrow the town of which you've spoken. Hurry, get out of here. I can't do anything until you get there." Therefore, the town was named Small. Is it not small? It's just a small thing I'm asking, please. And he said to him, "Look, I grant you this request." So he gives it to him by grace. Then the Lord rained brimstone and fire on Sodom and Gomorrah. He overthrew those cities and all the area and all the inhabitants of the city, including his family that stayed. And what grew on the ground? And that wasn't even what was important to him. It was the stuff, not the family. But Lot's wife, from behind him, looked, and she became a pillar of salt. I would suggest you go do some research in Judaism about why she turned into a pillar of salt. Have you ever wondered that? They've got the whole thing written down. Her name was Edith. And she was taught by her husband, Lot, who was taught by Abraham. Abraham, his big thing was what? What was his big thing? What was Abraham's big thing? Huh? He had his tent open. What was his big thing? Hospitality. Hospitality. That was his big thing. He taught that to Lot because that's part of Judaism. When they went to Sodom, guess what his wife did? His wife said, "Quit bringing that Jewish crap into my house." And she divided the house, her side and Lot's side. Yeah. This is what's written in the Midrash. And so, and Tanhuma, I believe it is. And then, when the angels come, he tells her, "Bring them a little salt." And she says, "You're going to bring this garbage into my house too?" And so she's turned into a pillar of salt because she sinned with the salt by not providing salt for the angels and showing hospitality. Why? Because it was taught by Avraham. She wasn't going to have that Judaism in that house. And so she was turned into the very thing she sinned against or sinned with. So everybody's killed, and she looks back and becomes a pillar of salt. And that's why a pillar of salt. It was all about Abraham. The whole thing's about Abraham. Either Judaism, like Abraham, or not. That's the whole story. So, where does he go to? Where does he flee to? It's about 4 miles away. Zoar. Do you remember Zoar? Do you remember it? What's Zoar? You don't remember? It's one of the 5 cities that God said he was going to destroy. That he was rescued from. And now he's going from the frying pan into the fire. He's going to the worst one. Sodom was not the worst one. Bela was. Bela means destruction. Baal, master of destruction. I believe it was Zoar because we're told later on in Genesis 14, later in last week's Torah portion, that it was Zoar. That's Bela. It was the smallest. It had the least amount of sin then, but it became the worst. And this is where this dude wanted to go. He just was not going to leave. No matter what it took, he was not going to leave. But he's righteous. He's righteous. Whether you want him to be or not, he was righteous. Whether the Christians you meet, you want them to be righteous or not, they're righteous if they're born again. Jews, if they're in the covenant, they're righteous, whether you want them to be or not. They could be the biggest jerk in the world, but they're righteous. Yes?
2 things about, so they pressed hard.
They pressed hard against Lot.
One of the things is that there was like a pressure, they were just trying to put pressure on him.
They were trying to put pressure on him
That he could change his mind, and then the other thing is,
so he could change his mind. And then
and then the other thing is, was like, you're gonna act as a judge.
you're going to act as a judge. You came in as a stranger, now you're going to act as a judge.
Some of the commentaries say, you're like a native here. Basically, you've taken on so
Yes,
much.
you're like a native here. You are a sodomite.
You are just like
You're just like us.
And yet you're trying to tell us.
Yeah, you're trying to tell us that we're bad? Right. Right. That's exactly right. Because they became just like the world. He became just like the world. And so they're telling him, who are you to talk to us about right and wrong? You do just like we do. Except for the sodomizing part. That's right. I don't know where his wife was from. I'm not sure. That I don't know. So Luke 9 and Luke 17 both say the same thing. The one who wants to save his life, like Lot, will lose it. But whoever loses his life, he's the one who's going to find it, like Abraham. Abraham got a knife out at the age of 99 and circumcised himself. And so he rules the world. And Lot, who tried to save himself, I got an idea, please, please, isn't it just a small thing? It's just a small, you guys have been so gracious. You've been so nice from God. I really appreciate it. But look, there's this, so he's going to tell us how to do it. He's going to tell God how to save himself. And he tries to save himself. But he's still righteous. So now we have a negative and a positive. Lot being saved, I showed you last week, it's a picture of the day of the Lord. Those battles between the north and the south are going to happen again. Who was the north? Who was the bad guys from the north? They came down and took Judah. They came down and attacked Israel. Who took Judah? No, they took Israel. Who took Judah? Babylon. So, who's from the north? Babylon. Who's from the south? False Messiah. False Messiah. This is going to happen again in the day of the Lord. I showed you this last week. Now, Luke 17, 24 through 30 says that not only was Noah like the day of the Lord, but Lot, his situation is like the day of the Lord. I showed you this last week. So will the Son of Man be in his day. Just as it happened in the days of Noah, it was the same as happened in the days of Lot. So, just like Noah was a picture of the day of the Lord, the birth pangs, so is Lot. I showed you last week, Abraham went and saved him. But this is an even better picture. It's an even better picture of the birth pangs. Because, destruction by fire. And everything's going to be burned up in the birth pangs. Everything. The elements will melt with intense heat. That verse freaks me out every time I read it. The elements, magnesium, einsteinium, hydrogen, helium. Yeah, there's an einsteinium. Lawrencium. They're going to melt with intense heat in the day of the Lord. And that's what happened to Sodom and Gomorrah and the other cities of the plain. So, it says, it'll be the same as happened in the days of Lot. They were eating, they were drinking, they were buying, they were selling, they were planting, they were building. But on the day that Lot left Sodom, what day did he leave Sodom? What day did he leave Sodom? I already told you. Sometime during Hagamatzah, for sure. The rabbis say the 16th, which they say is the beginning of first fruits. On the day he left Sodom, because of grace, because God took him out by grace, it rained fire and brimstone from heaven and destroyed them all. It will be just the same on the day that the Son of Man is revealed, the day of the Lord. So, whether we want it to be so or not, you're going to have to start learning how to keep your opinions to yourself about believers, about what they believe, about what they think. They are our brothers and sisters, and you got to keep your mouth shut a lot of times about what we believe, each other. Because if you don't have a way to determine if somebody's born again, you have nothing to say. You have nothing to say. And you can't say, well, the Word of God says blah, blah, blah. The Bible says blah, blah, blah. Okay, then so why is the Hellenized church in the condition it's in? They've all got the Word of God. They've all got the Bible. They all quote the Bible. So don't make the same mistake. We don't have a way to determine who's born again. So you've got to be careful in what you believe about this stuff, about fellow believers and the religion. 2 Peter, here's a positive, 2:6-9. If he condemns Sodom and Gomorrah to destruction by reducing to ashes, having made them an example of what is coming for the ungodly. Sodom and Gomorrah is just a simple example of that's what's going to happen to the ungodly. Zot, be burned up. All the ungodly. Then the Lord knows how to rescue the godly, how to show grace. He knows how to do it. And also, he knows how to show grace to rescue from trial, just from a trial. from a problem and to keep the unrighteous under punishment for the day of judgment at the same time. So our problem is that we can think of one thing at a time. We can't think of both opposites at the same time, but we have to. God is really, really, really nice. He's really, really going to toast people at the same time. So you got problems? We all got problems. Everybody's got problems. The trick is to have the same kind of understanding that Abraham had. That I'm a mess, but I'm going to learn from the Judaism I do so I can make me better, so I can understand him more and all his weird, convoluted thinking. God's bizarre. He's so strange because I don't understand him. And the more I understand him, the more peace I'll have, the better I'll feel, the less I'll spiral into depression. But that requires doing and then listening to what you do in Judaism. Because God knows how to rescue you from it. He can pluck you out of it. Just don't be like Lot when he does. Be like Abraham when he does. Okay, what do you want? I'll do it. You want what? All right, let's go for it. Let's do it. You want me to do what? All right. All right. Yes?
The angel told Lot what to do.
The angel told Lot what to do.
Go up to the mountain.
Yes, he told him to flee to the mountains.
And he didn't want to do Aliyah.
Ooh, he didn't want to do Aliyah, to go up to the mountain of God.
He wanted to go where he wanted.
Right, he wanted to go into the desert, into the death.
And eventually, we know what happened.
Right.
It was a mess.
So, yeah, that's very good. That's very good. The angel told him what to do. All he had to do was say, okay, all right, like Abraham does. All right, I hope that this is understandable, and I hope that you can apply it, because if you can't apply it, it's just words. It's not going to help you, and I want to help you. So, try to locate. Here's where everything falls apart. Because I'm a teacher, so I have, like in school. Okay, kids, now here's what you got to do. I got to give you your homework. Here's where everything falls apart. But I would like to suggest to you, identify in yourself where the fear about money is. And picture Lot. Just picture him. Picture what he did, how he felt, what he said. And maybe it'll like put a mirror in front of you. Maybe. So it'll help you to change. That's what I'm doing. When I read those words, what Lot said, I was like, dear God. I mean, that helps. That really helps. To have him in front of me. All right, let's pray. Lord, thank you for all the examples that you give us in your Torah of everything we need to know, everything we need to see, everything we need to experience. You answer all of our questions, and I ask, Father, that you'd help us to unbraid ourselves with the love of the world, the love of the stuff, and to tie ourselves like tzitzit to you. V'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha. You shall love the Lord your God. And you show us how, you tell us how, and ask that you help every one of us individually to apply your Torah to us and to do more of your Torah and to listen to more of your Torah. In the name of Yeshua. Amen. Let's do Kiddush.